The sun hung low like a blood-orange wound over the cliffs, casting long, weeping shadows into the hollow where the cave breathed. Wind moved like an old spirit between stone and scrub, whispering to the bones of things long buried. In this quiet cradle of earth and silence, she lived, a girl of the wilderness, barefoot and untethered, her eyes the color of storm water, her hair a black snarl of thistle and night. She spoke no language known to men, but the crows came when she called. The old wolf, scarred and near silent, walked beside her like a shadow she had earned. She wore buckskin stitched with feather and thong, and on her skin, soot and clay patterns painted her story, though none remain alive to read it. By day, she hunted with the precision of a hawk. By night, she painted on the walls of her cave, not for memory but for proof that she had once lived, once bled, once seen the sky catch fire with war. The cave itself was carved into the flank of a canyon, narrow-mouthed, half hidden by twisted brush and burnt cedar. A trickle of water bled from the stone beside it, just enough to gather in a hollowed basin where she washed, drank, and listened, always listening. Even the land warned her before it killed. She did not know how many seasons had passed since she last heard another voice, but she remembered that voices could lie. She remembered fire running, the smell of iron and men who took what they did not need. So now she trusted only the land and the creatures it birthed. They never pretended. They never begged. But on the evening the wind changed, blew warm from the east, full of dust and strange echoes. Something shifted. The wolf lifted its snout, nostrils flaring. The crows circled lower. And far off, hoofbeats rattled the canyon like a forgotten drum. 3 riders came over the rise just before nightfall. Young, all of them, ragged from the trail, eyes sharp with the kind of hunger that didn't come from lack of food. They weren't looking for her. Not yet. They were chasing a mustang that had bucked its rope and fled into the ravine. But the land gives what it chooses. The one in front had a laugh like a blade, all teeth and heat. The second wore silence like a badge, but his eyes moved like a thief's. The third, he was different. He lagged behind slightly, as though pulled by something unseen. His hair was ash blonde, his face too kind for the land he rode. His hands trembled slightly as he dismounted. She saw him first. Hidden behind a jut of rock, she watched as they set camp near her stream. They didn't know she was there, but the wolf growled low in its throat, a warning. She pressed a hand to its back, calming it, never taking her eyes off the strangers. The fire they built sent sparks into the sky like dying prayers. Later, she moved downwind through the brush. Closer, her eyes fixed on the blond boy. He was looking at the sky like he'd lost something there. A mother, maybe a brother. He didn't speak much, just stared into the fire while the other 2 laughed and drank. She didn't understand their words. Didn't want to, but she watched his hands, gentle things, even in stillness. The next morning, while they hunted the mustang again, she crept closer. Near where the boy had slept, she found something left behind on purpose, a small carving of a bird, will from bone. Crude, but offered. A gift. She did not smile, but she did not run. That night, she returned the carving, left it near their fire, this time with a smear of red clay across its wings. A message. I saw. I know. But I am not yours. The second man saw it first. He swore, hand on his gun. The loud one laughed. Desert spirits, he joked. But the blond boy knew. His face turned toward the cliffs. Toward her. He started leaving more things after that. Berries, a copper coin, a strip of leather braided into a loop. Each time she returned something. A single crow's feather, a stone smoothed by the river, a bundle of sage. Their words were different, but the trade was ancient, and in that space between giving and receiving, something began. She came closer. He saw her for the first time 2 days later, truly saw her. She stepped from the brush just long enough to let the firelight catch her face. He didn't move, didn't reach, just looked. His eyes softened like dusk itself had entered them. She vanished before the others turned their heads. The next evening, he walked away from camp and stood by the stream, alone. She watched him from the shadows. He didn't speak, didn't beg, just waited. The wolf paced beside her, uneasy, sensing the thread being pulled taut. The boy knelt slowly and set something in the water, a carved figure of 2 hands touching. Then he left. She waited until his steps faded, then knelt too, touching the carving. It was smooth beneath her fingers, still warm. She closed her eyes and listened to the wind, the night birds, the echo of a language not spoken but felt. In the canyon below, the boy lay awake, his face turned toward the cliffs. And above, unseen but near, she traced the lines of her neck's painting onto the cave wall. A man made a skylight, and a girl made a stone, standing close but never touching. There was something beginning here, something dangerous. She didn't know his name, didn't want to. Names gave shape to things that could die. But his presence stirred something long buried in her bones, something like memory, or maybe hope. The wind carried the howl of a coyote. The wolf lifted its head and answered. She listened. Days fell into one another like dying stars, slow and quiet, except for the shifting tension under the skin of the land. The girl and the blonde stranger now moved around each other with the hesitant gravity of two things drawn together by forces older than understanding. No shared tongue passed between them, but they learned each other anyway, through gesture, offering, and silence. A leaf left beside a fire, a track trace in the dirt, a look held longer than instinct allowed. He called her nothing. She named him nothing. Yet when he approached the stream now, she no longer vanished. She stood still, the wolf behind her like a second spine, its yellow eyes fixed on his every move. He would kneel, slow as breath, and set something in the water, a pine cone, a copper button, once a length of twine knotted into the shape of a fish. Always with care, always without demand. She took what she wanted, left what mattered. He seemed to understand the difference. The other two, his companions, grew restless. Their eyes sharpened into slivers of suspicion. The loud one, all grins and half-drunken stories, had begun to look toward the cave mouth with something colder than curiosity. The quiet one, darker of skin and heavier in step, watched the girl like a hunter marking a trail. Their interest was not kind. One morning, the quiet one followed her tracks through the stone brush. He didn't find her, but he found the wolf. The scars on his arm would stay. That night, he spat blood into the fire and cursed her as a witch. The blond boy said nothing, but he didn't look away. Still, the boy returned each day. Sometimes he sang low songs in a language that curled soft and strange in her ears. She did not understand the words, but the rhythm of them soothed something brittle in her chest. Sometimes he carved in the dirt beside the stream crude pictures of a tree, a sun, a bird with spread wings. She corrected him, drew hers beside his, taught him her way. He smiled often now, a gentle thing, like a boy who had once known peace and was trying to remember how it felt. His laughter, when it came quietly, like the rustle of dry leaves. She, in turn, let herself soften. She approached while he rested, sat within reach of his shadow. She let the wolf brush against his leg without warning. When he flinched, she watched his face, not with mockery, but with fascination. He did not strike. He reached slowly and laid a hand upon the animal's head. The wolf tolerated it. That was the only permission she needed. Sometimes, when the canyon went still and the sun swelled orange in the west, she would bring him to the cave's mouth, never inside, but near enough for him to see her walls, painted in ochre and ash. He studied them with reverence. Figures locked in fire, a line of women walking into shadow, a child cupped in the mouth of a wolf. He pointed to one image and raised his brow. She only looked at him, long and flat, until he lowered his gaze again. The past was not for strangers. But he was becoming less strange with every quiet moment. She began to listen for his footsteps the way she listened for the wind. Then one evening, something shifted. She had given him a carved feather. It had taken her hours, shaped with a bone blade and worry. He turned it over in his hands, then placed it on his chest and touched his heart. His meaning was clear. She stood still, breath caught. The wolf looked between them. But before she could move, the others returned early from their hunt. She vanished into the brush, swift as wind. The feather dropped into the dirt between them. The loud one saw it and laughed. "She's got your guts twisted, huh?" he sneered. "You better hope she ain't leading you into a trap." The boy said nothing, but his shoulders hardened. That night, he stayed near the fire, eyes on the cliffs, lips silent. The next day, she did not come, nor the day after. By the third dawn, the boy rose before the others and walked alone to the stream. He waited. The sun crawled over the rocks. A crow cawed and flew east. He sat on the riverbank and carved another figure, this time of her, or the idea of her. A woman with wild hair and sharp eyes. He sat on a flat stone where she usually stood. Hours passed. He did not move. Up the ridge, she watched. She had been unsure. The feather had meant more than she could name, and in the boy's gesture, she saw the shape of a future she did not understand. Futures were dangerous things. They asked you to believe. But still, she had watched him return, again and again, each time more open, more still. He was not like the others. Not a taker. Not a liar. When dusk finally touched the edge of the world, she stepped out of shadow. He rose, hope blooming behind his eyes. But she held up one hand. Wait. She moved slowly, deliberately. From her pouch, she drew a single item, a piece of charcoal wrapped in sinew. She approached the rock and knelt beside the carving he'd left. She traced a line from the figure's hand to a second figure, his, drawn in bold strokes. Then, with one finger, she connected them. The boy stared. Then he reached out, slowly, and placed his hand over the line she'd drawn. The wolf lay beside them now, no longer guarding, just present. Above, the stars began to crack open. The girl stood and vanished into the trees. Behind her, the boy stayed still, his hand resting on the stone, the line between them drawn not just in charcoal, but in something deeper, something neither of them yet knew how to carry. The sun rose pale, and in the morning the silence broke. The loud one, bitter from hunger and time, climbed the ridge alone, muttering about lost horses and witch girls with secrets buried in bone. His boots crushed lichen as he moved toward the cave, his eyes bright with something mean. The blond boy noticed a trail in the dust, noticed and followed, heart beating like a snared bird. He knew before he reached the edge that something sacred was about to be broken. She hadn't seen him coming. She was knelt just inside the cave, painting in the cool hush of morning, her fingers smeared with ochre and ash. The wolf was gone, likely ranging. She didn't hear the first crack of twig behind her, but she felt it, wrongness crawling across her skin like fire ants. She turned just as the loud one stepped into the mouth of her world, and for a moment neither moved. His eyes flicked the walls, the bones, the bundles wrapped in fur, the stories painted in blood colors. He grinned, slow and ugly. So this is where the wild thing lives. She backed away, one hand behind her, feeling for her blade. He raised his hands mockingly, pretending peace. Easy, girl. I'm just looking. Don't mean you no harm. But I heard things, see, about a cave, about silver buried with the bones of old warriors. You wouldn't be hiding something now, would you? She didn't answer, didn't understand. But she saw enough in his stance, his teeth, the way his hand hovered near his belt knife. He stepped forward. That was enough. The blade in her hand was curved, carved from antler and sharpened with flint. She moved fast, like lightning in a bottle. He wasn't ready. The slash across his cheek bloomed red and hot. He roared and swung wildly, catching her across the ribs. She staggered but didn't fall. And then the wolf was there. A blur of gray and fury. It came from the brush like vengeance. It sank its teeth into the man's arm before he could raise it. They went down in a knot of blood and dust. He screamed. She scrambled back, clutching her side, breath wheezing through pain. Then a gunshot. One shot. Sudden and final. The wolf jerked once, then collapsed beside her, silent, eyes open. The blond boy stood at the cave mouth, pistol smoking in his hand. His breath was ragged. The loud one lay twitching, his mouth moving soundlessly, blood pouring from his shoulder. He'd live, maybe. The wolf wouldn't. She stared at the boy, eyes wide, full of horror and disbelief. Her hands were slick with blood that wasn't hers. Her breath came fast. The wolf made no sound. He stepped forward, face pale, shaking. I didn't mean he would have killed, but the words fell like stones. Useless. She didn't understand them. Or maybe she simply didn't want to. She fell to her knees beside the wolf and pressed her forehead to its fur. It was still warm. The boy dropped his gun, walked forward, slow, unarmed. She didn't look up, didn't stop him as he knelt beside her and placed his hand beside hers, both touching the same body. Her breath was shallow. Her eyes didn't meet his. He could see it in her face. Something had torn. He helped her bury the wolf beneath a twisted juniper, its roots wrapping the grave like arms. She did not cry, but her fingers trembled as she laid the final stone. She took a single tooth from its mouth and strung it onto a leather cord, tying it tight around her throat. That night, she did not paint. She did not leave the cave. The other man, the quiet one, watched from afar, unease thick around him. When the loud one came limping back into camp, arm bound in cloth, his story came broken and furious. She cut me, beast tried to kill me, boys gone soft for a cave rat. He spat blood into the dust. The quiet one didn't answer, but his eyes stayed dark. The blonde boy slept alone beneath the stars, curled near the carved stone where she had once drawn their names without letters. He hadn't meant to kill the wolf. He'd meant to protect her. But meaning wasn't enough anymore. The next morning, she came to him. Her body was stiff, wrapped in fresh bandages, her face unreadable. But she came. She sat beside him without speaking, her hands in her lap, the wolf's tooth resting against her collarbone. He waited. He didn't reach for her. After a long time, she drew something in the dust. A fire. 3 figures. One turned away, alone. She looked at him, then pointed to the figure alone. His jaw tightened. He nodded. Then she reached for his hand. When their fingers touched, it was not soft. It was not sweet. It was raw and real and earned. Behind them, in the camp, the others whispered silver, of ghosts, of the wild girl who knew things she shouldn't. The quiet one watched the cave now like a man measuring risk. The loud one sharpened his knife with rage. But none of them knew what had been lost in that canyon, or what had been found. Dawn spilled across the canyon like spilled gold, too bright for what was coming. The girl stood barefoot at the edge of her world, watching the wind stir dust from the stones. Her hand rested on the carved tooth at her throat, thumb moving slow over its worn ridges. She had buried the wolf, buried part of herself with it. Now, only the silence remained, thicker than before. He waited beside her, the boy with ash-blonde hair and callous hands that still shook when no one looked. He didn't speak. He didn't try to fill the space. He had learned something of silence, too. They stood like that until the first footstep cracked the calm. The quiet one emerged from behind a boulder, rifle slung low, eyes narrowed with calculation. Behind him limped the loud one, his arms still bound, mouth twitching with venom. They didn't bother pretending peace. She knows where it is. The loud one growled. I seen the bones, the paintings. This whole place sits on blood and silver. The boy stepped forward, one hand low by his side. We're not here for silver, he said, voice even. We're leaving. You should too. The quiet one's eyes flicked between them. Something about the girl unsettled him, like she wasn't just watching but measuring. He shifted his grip. You don't get it. There's something old here. Buried. Her people knew. She's not some wild thing. She's a key. The girl took one step down the ridge. Her eyes didn't blink. She pointed the loud one, then drew a flat line across her palm. A warning. The loud one spit. Go ahead and glare, which ain't afraid of you. Ain't afraid of some ghost dog you buried. The boy moved faster than any of them expected. His gun was in his hand before breath caught in anyone's throat. He aimed straight at the ground, fired once. Dust jumped. A warning shot, inches from the loud one's boot. Next one goes in your leg, he said, voice rough, low. She's not yours to threaten. The quiet one stepped back, uncertainty crawling into his face. Think about what you're doing, he muttered. You'd throw away everything for her? The boy looked at her, at the dirt on her face, the scar at her ribs, the steady fire in her eyes. Then he looked at the men he used to call friends. Yes, he said. The loud one reached. The girl moved faster. She dropped low, snatched a stone from the dust, and flung it with force born of memory and rage. It struck the loud one's temple. He fell hard, blood blooming from the wound. The quiet one froze, hands raised halfway. Enough, he muttered. Enough. The girl approached the fallen man and knelt beside him. From her pouch, she drew a bundle wrapped in deer hide. Old bones, smooth silver coins, fragments of carved ivory. She laid them beside his twitching hand. Then she turned and began digging. With bare hands, she scraped the earth, blood blooming in crescents beneath her fingernails. The boy moved beside her, wordless, helping. Together they unearthed a hollow beneath the stones, an ancient cavity. Within it, bones coiled like sleeping snakes, trinkets placed in ritual rows. A burial, not treasure, not power, memory. She stood, breathing hard. Her eyes burned. Then she dropped the coins in the loud one's lap and walked away. The boy stood over the open grave, his face drawn tight. "This is what you came for?" he asked, voice shaking. "Bones and curses?" The quiet one didn't answer. He knelt, gathered the coins, then looked up and met the boy's gaze. "You better run far," he said. "Men are coming who won't ask first." The boy said nothing, just turned. They left before nightfall. She led him through narrow canyons the stars had never touched, past stone altar forgotten by maps. They traveled light, no horse, no fire, just their breath and the bond stitched in silence. At dusk on the third day, they stopped near a dry riverbed. She pulled charcoal from her pouch and crouched beside a boulder, drawing her last memory. A man and a woman, hands touching. Above them, a wolf. Behind them, a storm. He watched her work, then gently placed his hand over hers. She looked at him, not with gratitude or sorrow or question, just seeing. And for the first time, she spoke. One word, soft, unknown, a name, maybe. His face broke into something fragile, something full. She stood, and he stood with her. The stars rose quiet over the desert. Behind them, the canyon exhaled its secrets into the wind.